Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you notice behind me, my bookshelves look pretty bad. They look like they're falling apart even. And that's because I have taken 18 books off of that shelf, because today I wanted to tell you guys about all of the books that I acquired in the month of August. If you've seen any of my videos before, I often talk about how I thrift my books and all of my books are used in secondhand, and I did the math a couple weeks ago on, cost per book ratio, and I on average pay 60 cents for each of my used books. So I wanted to tell you about all 18 books that I got, give you a quick little synopsis of what I know going into it, because obviously I haven't read them, so I'll just give you a little synopsis. And then I'm also going to tell you how much I paid for them, because whenever someone buys books secondhand, I am always interested to know how much they paid for it. So let's get right into it. To start off on a very dark and sad note, I paid 25 cents to get Night by Elie Wiesel. This is a memoir from a man who survived the Holocaust, and it is about, the deaths of the people around him, just like a really observant description of what was going on in a concentration camp. And it was translated by his wife, which I think is a really interesting, that's a close connection to the translator, but so it definitely makes it a more intimate read, I would assume. But so I've heard that this one is very, very good, and obviously very sad. So for 25 cents, Night. Next, at a free little library, I traded in a book that I read and didn't like very much for the Aeneid of Virgil. Just to preface this, free little libraries, I do take this very seriously. I don't just put garbage in there, and you shouldn't either. So I traded for a book of equal par, okay? But besides that, for the Aeneid, this is one of those epic poems. I think it was originally written in Latin by a Roman poet, Virgil. And this follows Aeneas kind of in the founding of Rome. I think Augustus is involved. I think the Trojan War is involved. I had to read bits and pieces of this for obtaining my undergrad in history, which I talked about in my last video, but I've never read the entire thing. So I think that this is probably something important for me to fully get into start to finish. So for free, basically, the Aeneid. Also traded for in a free little library is King Harold's Saga. Now, obviously based on the stickers that are attached to this book, it was used for a college class, which means it'll be right up my alley. So King Harold's Saga, this is like half myth, half nonfiction about this king and his wars across Europe and Russia to his final assault in England in 1066. So this is a very old story, but one that I'm very excited to get into, especially for basically free. The next book I got, this was also in a free little library, but Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. This, I think, is some required reading for me to do because I'm going to become a high school history teacher, as I've mentioned in previous videos. And I think that if I teach American history or slavery or, the Civil War, I think that this is, some really solid material that I need to read before I enter the classroom and have a classroom of my own. So finding it for free, of course I need to read it. Next, and this is probably my most exciting find of the month, I think, Ali Smith's How to Be Both. I thought that this was kind of a random book that I didn't think I would ever actually find secondhand, and it's also a bit of an odd one to describe, but I found it in a free little library. So basically, this is Ali Smith took inspiration from a fresco painting, and she's kind of weaving together stories and weaving together art in a way that is supposedly very unique and different. And so it's, you know, about art's versatility. And so she gets a story from, she's talking about a Renaissance artist from the 1460s, and then also a child of the 1960s, and somehow their tales weave together. There are two tales of love and injustice twist into a singular yarn where time gets timeless, knowing gets mysterious, fiction gets real, and all of life's givens are given a second chance. See what I mean by, I don't really know how to describe this one, but this sounds super interesting to me, and I was very, very happy to find this in a free little library. Next, for 10 cents, I got The Little Prince. This is a French classic children's book, and it has pictures in it and such. But it's just supposedly a really heartwarming read, and for 10 cents I couldn't pass it up. But I thought that this would be a really sweet one for whenever I'm in the mood for a very quick little read. Next, and also in a free little library, because I had a lot of luck in free little libraries this month, I also got Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. This won the Pulitzer Prize, I think in like 2003 or something. But this is about, I believe, a pastor writing a letter to his son, kind of about faith and family and love and morals. So I heard online that this book, if you like Mary Oliver's poems, you would really like this book. And so I love Mary Oliver poems. So I think that Gilead will be a really good read for me. Next, I got Boone's Lick by Larry McMurtry. This is by the same author as Lonesome Dove, which is probably my favorite book of all time. I love that book so very much. So I'm very excited to find some more Larry McMurtry. This is one of his later novels, and it is about a woman who, her husband goes out on the Oregon Trail to kind of, like supply runs and stuff on the Oregon Trail, and she suspects, rightly so, that her husband is cheating on her across the Oregon Trail, and so she goes out with, I think, her sister and her brother-in-law, and they just want to set things right. So I think that this will be like a funny, kind of Oregon Trail story, and I'm very excited to read some more Larry McMurtry. Next, for $1, I found Franz Kafka's Complete Stories. The only Kafka that I have read thus far in my reading journey has been The Metamorphosis and the Trial, which are probably two of his biggest works ever. So this collection has plenty of short stories. The list just keeps on going. So I enjoyed The Metamorphosis and the Trial very much, and his kind of absurdist take on life is a very funny and compelling way to look at things. So I'm very excited to get into his short and long short stories. Next, and also in a free little library, I cannot get over this cover. Look at that! Is that not the coolest cover you've ever seen before? So, Turn of the Screw. This was a book that I had heard the title of a million times in my life, but I never really knew what it was. So once I saw this, I knew that I instantly needed to add it to my to be read list for October because spooky. But I guess it is about a lady who the two children that she watches over, she believes that there are two ghosts that are haunting these two children. And throughout the story, I guess you cannot tell whether the ghosts are actually real or if this lady is just crazy. But I think that this will be a very fun read for spooky season. And back to some more epic poetry. I got Homer's Iliad. This is another one that I had to read bits and pieces of for my undergrad degree. I was supposed to read the whole thing and I didn't. But this is another one of those epic poems, and I am planning on reading both the Iliad and the Odyssey before the Odyssey movie comes out, I think next summer, because I'm a little worried about the casting of that movie, even though I haven't read them yet. So I think that I need to read both the Iliad and the Odyssey in full before that movie comes out. So if I am a hater of the movie, I can be a hater with truth on my side. So, the Iliad. 25 cents. This is another one that I was very excited to find. The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I have never read anything by Hemingway before, but I do have his Farewell to Arms back here that I'm also planning on reading. But The Sun Also Rises, this is about kind of just feeling lost after World War I, and it's also the nightlife of the 1920s. I think it's a bit of a romance between a guy and a girl, but this is one of those classics that I just have never gotten to before, and I really think that this would be a valuable one for me to read. Next, for, I believe 25 cents, I got Madame Bovary. This is another one of those classics that I've just never gotten to before, but it's about a woman who is very unhappily married, and so she tries to go out on her marriage and find, you know, love and lust elsewhere, and I guess it kind of leads to her downfall in the end. But I think there's a lot of female classics that's an untapped market for me, because most of the stuff that I read is either like psychological or like war, which is usually a male-based scene. So I'm very interested to get into some feminist, or I suppose this is feminist classics. In the first YouTube video that I posted on this channel 3 weeks ago, I read my very first Joan Didion. I read Blue Nights, which was her memoir about, you know, the loss of her daughter. And so whenever I found more Joan Didion in a free little library, obviously I had to trade something out for it. But this book is a collection of essays, and it is basically her thoughts on like counterculture in the 60s, you know, and just kind of capturing like the unique time of the 1960s and the hippies, and you know, it says on the back of here that she makes the people of this time, she makes them neither villainous nor glamorous, but alive and botched and often mournfully beautiful. Does that not sound wonderful? So I'm very excited to get into some more Joan Didion, because I did enjoy Blue Nights a lot. And sitting right next to Slouching Towards Bethlehem in the same free little library, I found Let Me Tell You What I Mean. This is another collection of essays by her, and this is kind of more her thoughts on literature and prose and just kind of writing. So as one of the big writers of, I guess like the 70s, I think that's when she was mainly writing, but as an author that was big during that time, she probably has a lot to say on writing and being a writer. So I'm very excited to also get into these essays. Next, also in a free little library, I know I just sound like I'm repeating myself a lot today, but I found Dante's Inferno. Is that cover not very, very cool? This is another one of those epic poems that I just think is valuable for me to get to at some point. And this is just about one man's journey through the various levels of hell. I think that's all I can say about this, but I just could not get enough of that cover. I thought that that was so very cool. So to find that in a free little library, absolutely, I'm going to take that home with me. Also in a free little library, I found The Secret Garden. This is a book that I never really knew what it was about, but again, I had heard its title over and over again in like pop culture references that I feel like it's a valuable one for me to read. But The Secret Garden, it always put me in mind of Little Women, even though I know it's not the same story at all. But it's one of those sweet, you know, female classics that, again, I just feel like I've never really gotten into. So I'm very excited to read The Secret Garden. And lastly, surprise, this was also found in a free little library. I found The Golden Apples of the Sun and Other Stories by Ray Bradbury. So Ray Bradbury, if you haven't heard the name before, he wrote Fahrenheit 451, which is one of those big classics that you have to read whenever you're in high school. And Fahrenheit 451 I thought was an incredibly compelling story. So I thought that short stories by the same author would be a very good place to get into some more sci-fi-like ideas, because sci-fi is really a genre that I just simply don't get into. So I think that, you know, short stories is a good way to inch myself into the idea. So that was a very quick synopsis of all of the 18 books that I acquired in the month of August. Now, as I was saying, a lot of those I did find in free little libraries, and I traded them out for things of equal par. I didn't put any garbage in there. I didn't put any books that are falling apart. I just simply put in books that I read and I didn't enjoy that much. I put Normal People in one of them, which is a super popular book these days, and I think a lot of people my age would be very happy to find that in there. I put, oh God, I can't even remember. I put a lot of books of equal par in there, so believe me, I am not ripping anybody off for these. But I got all of these 18 books, and I only paid $2.85, because the majority of them were trade-ins from books that I bought in the past, but we don't count that towards the cost. So 18 books for $2.85 is incredibly good. So I did very good in the month of August, and I can't wait to get to some of these. But thank you for watching again, and I hope to see you next weekend. Thank you.